The fact you need to beg for a live service game to exist these days is why this entire thing is pretty stupid if you ask me. They kept saying that this wouldn't happen, it was going to be the one to break through the mold, yet here we are again, not even a month after release, and already Bungie is knocking on death's door wondering if this is it for them. Like, the volatile state of games, that's nothing new. However, it saddens me how often we find ourselves here because of the audacity of what AAA just keeps on pushing. The entire concept of a live service game, for me at this point, it just kinda sounds like a crazy proposition in its entire way of existing. Like, what do you mean? You have a game you spend hundreds of millions of dollars on to make, and you spend all these years creating it, and you're telling me that unless enough people play it every single day for like the rest of time, that this game will just suddenly evaporate, and that all my progress will be erased, and that any money I spent on the game will either be taken from me or refunded if I'm lucky. How is this a model of game that we're supposed to be okay with? Like, before we mostly had single player games. Even if they didn't do the best sales-wise, right, they would at least still exist. You could still play them because they didn't rely on some infinite number of people to exist at all times to keep them alive. But that's the reality of always online games now, isn't it, right? They are uniquely the one kind of game that can effectively just disappear into the ether unless they're doing well 100% of the time. And isn't that kind of insane? Imagine if every movie that flopped at the box office didn't even come out to be rented or streamed, but instead they would just erase the movies if they didn't hit a certain threshold or money. Or like, what if that happened to music even, right? Oh, that album you like, well, it didn't hit the sales numbers that it needed day one or week one, so well, now nobody gets to listen to it now. We're just gonna erase that music from existing because you didn't support it. Oh, not enough kids came to your little cousin's birthday party? Well, that little cousin didn't hit the needed party members, so now we're gonna be putting them up for adoption. That last one might not be the best analogy, but like, come on, still, isn't this kind of crazy sounding no matter what? Like, yet in video games, if you don't attract a big enough audience in your live service, whatever game, well, surprise, nobody has a job now. The game's world is just erased and nobody who bought the game is allowed to play it anymore. So this now brings me to, Marathon, which like its name suggests, just keeps on moving, bless its little heart. This game has not been doing too hot, and a lot of information has now come out, and honestly, I already think we're going to be seeing massive changes to this game. As Forbes reported here, Marathon is a good game, but it's not a hit. In other news, you also need oxygen to breathe. So, all of this information is coming from Alinea Analytics, which kind of blew the hinges off the door recently on Marathon's performance so far. So, we now know officially, like, the sales numbers for Marathon. So, what do you think it is? 3 million, maybe 5 million copies sold? Well, look at this right now. Marathon has officially sold 1.2 million units since release and made about $55 million and has about 380,000 daily active users so far. Now, is this bad? Well, if you're a small game with very little overhead and you're a single developer who eats noodles every day, no, then this is fine. But if you're a AAA studio in Washington of all places, where it's more expensive than God to live, and you're backed by Sony, and you were bought for $3 billion promising the next big thing, yes, this is very bad. So let's dive into the details, I guess. And like, of that 1.2 million, right, about 800,000 of those sales were on Steam. Bizarrely, only 217,000 people bought Marathon on PlayStation, which is kind of wild considering it's a first-party Sony game, by the way. The smallest group, like usual, is Xbox, sitting at 133,000 players, or 11% of the overall pie. So Steam is 70%, PS5 is 19%, and all of this makes up the player base, which is, you know, very dire indeed. Anyways, according to Alinea, during GDC, or the Game Developers Conference, many conversations had among developers was apparently according to them as to why Marathon wasn't pulling the Arc Raiders-like numbers it should have. Despite the fact that they're both extraction shooters, and Bungie is a big name in like games and all that, the answer that Alinea came to themselves is that Arc Raiders' gameplay loop was a lot easier to figure out for the common gamer, while Marathon's UI, for example, alone was already filtering players because it was confusing for really no reason. And in Alinea's opinion, the experience of Marathon as a whole ends up chewing up a lot of newcomers that come and try the game and then spits them out before they can even figure out what the experience of this Marathon game even is. So they like leave before the game gets good, if you will. It's also because Arc Raiders is far more casual friendly, while Marathon pushes for offer the high-end PvP experience, which a lot of people can't do because they're not streamers or Call of Duty Twitch gods, but people with, normal jobs, which is fine by the way. Meaning that Marathon was made for the streamers and the high-end PvPers and kind of forgot about the people who actually keep these sorts of games alive. Alania also reported that when Arc Raiders had their free server slam test, they saw an 80% jump in copies sold. Whereas for Marathon, it was 49%. Not bad, but the only healthy number for Marathon somewhat is its daily active users. Again, that sits somewhere near 345 to 380,000 players per day apparently, which isn't bad, but not a swimming success either. The average playtime of a Marathon player on Steam so far is almost 28 hours, and on PS5 it's barely 17 hours. And about 7% of overall players who played Marathon have logged in over 100 hours already. According to Alania, this brings Marathon to a crossroads based on the data that they have collected, because during the same time period, Arc Raiders was able to shoot past like a few million copies sold in the time that it's taken Marathon to only hit 1.2 million themselves. But it's already worrying when about 2/3 of your player base that bought Marathon already are kind of moving on looking at those daily active user counts. This puts Bungie in a really weird position. So do they either A, double down on everything and spend more resources on this game and hope that they can turn things around? Or do they B, move their resources away from Marathon, just kind of let it die and focus all their bets on a Destiny 3 instead? Alania believes that in the next 6 months at best that Marathon will either be amazing and healthy or it's just not going to exist. And that's a crazy bet considering the outcomes of these two scenarios, but that's live service, baby. It's all a mess. You either sink or you swim, and in Marathon's case, they're kind of just floating in the water right now, trying to stay afloat and, not drown themselves. But knowing Sony and just how cutthroat they are when it comes to failure, the likelihood is unless Marathon turns things around, it's going to be curtains for that game. So I'm writing this video at noon on a Wednesday, so I understand people are mostly at work right now. But here's the Steam charts. As I write this, 24,000 people are currently sweating their cheeks off in Marathon as I speak, with a 24-hour high count of about 42,000 people. And remember, this is on Steam, so this is Marathon's primary platform because we know that 800,000 people have bought it here. But that also means currently of all the people who bought Marathon on Steam right now, that about 3% of that player base is playing it currently on Steam. And when people return home, that means about 6 or 7% of the Steam player base is still playing the game currently. That's not me trying to get a gotcha, that's just basic math. Like fine, alright, I'll even be fair and use the 42,000 high peak for 24 hours, right? And look here, I asked Google so that we can all see 42,000 is 5.25% of the people who bought Marathon on Steam that are currently playing it. So there you go. That means about 95% of the player base has left already on Marathon's main platform at its peak, mind you, when people come home and are able to still play it. So that means with Marathon's highest player count at 88,000, that's only about 8.8% of the player base who bought it that are being online at its highest peak when it came out. These are not the best numbers for your $3 billion Bungie studio buyout if you were Sony. Sure, Marathon made $55 million, but the game allegedly costed way more than what they're making. The alleged cost of Marathon was somewhere near $200 to $300 million for Sony and Bungie. And I already know, people are going to say, where did you hear this? Where is this number from? Well, Paul Tassi of Forbes, who has ties to Bungie and confirmed, as you can see here, he cross-referenced that 1.2 million copies sold with the people that he knows at Bungie, and the numbers are, according to Paul's sources, pretty much the same, so that is indeed what Marathon has sold so far. So now that you know that, and he confirmed it himself, now look here where Paul then confirms in his own article on the sales of Marathon, that the number that he's heard from people close to Bungie is a production cost of $200 to $300 million. So that means if we take all of this and we figure out what $55 million in revenue is against that supposed $300 million budget of Marathon, it means that Bungie has recouped about 18.33% of their overall money spent making the game in the first place. Which then means that Marathon, at least when it comes to copies sold and all that, has not broken even or made Bungie a single dollar of profit yet. They are operating at a loss almost a month after release. And look, you can yell at me all you want, I'm just telling you what's happening, okay? I don't control control people, they buy what they want, and that's what's happening here. The journalists can try to shift the narrative all they want, but the numbers just don't lie, and Marathon is in the red right now. And the numbers, they keep dwindling, which is a surefire sign that unless something drastic happens fast, it's gonna be curtains. My guess is their last-ditch effort attempt here is to make Marathon free to play. They're gonna have to. There's genuinely no other way they're going to save this game besides doing that. It will be probably embarrassing for Bungie to do that, but I mean, they did the same thing with Destiny 2 as well after release because the paywall kept people out. And again, if they do go free to play, they'll have to then hope that their cosmetics and their bundles are going to save the day. But based on how much I've seen people say the cosmetics aren't really worth buying in Marathon or look cool, yeah, I don't know, man. But that $40 price tag, $50 in Canada, is going to kill this game before long unless they do something quick. Maybe they could offer Marathon for 50% off, see what that does. I think more people can justify $20 to buy in maybe. But even then, I still think the be-all end-all last-ditch effort here is just to go free to play, dude. Sure, yes, you're going to make the people mad who paid the $40 up front, but you just have to go into your reserves of your future content, pull some of those skins and whatever other cosmetics you have and make them exclusive to people who pay the $40 as a thank you. And then I guess you can take all of that and make a Founders Pack option that is $40 that offers all the same skins in that bundle for people who play it for free, and if they like the game, they're going to buy it and support you. This is genuinely the only way I see Marathon even having a chance at survival. Not saying it's going to survive if they even do that, because people might just play free, spend nothing anyways, but I mean, like, what's the alternative here, guys? Time is running out fast, so they have to pivot. I'm telling you, dude, you can't be charging money for your PvP game. Like, Arc Raiders and Helldivers got away with it, because they're largely PvE games first, so that attracts a different crowd. But if your game is PvP focused, like Marathon is, and that's pretty much it, and your competition is gonna be stuff like the Warzones and the Red Six and the Valorants and like stuff like that and more, which are all free to play, by the way, Apex as well, you are delusional to try to ask for money up front for your game, no matter how good you might think it is. Some may say, well, Marathon needs their No Man's Sky moment to turn things around, but according to Paul Tassi, that can't happen, okay? Here's what he said. The idea of some sort of potential Cyberpunk or No Man's Sky turnaround doesn't really apply here. First, the game is already good, and attempting to expand it to more casual players seems like a ship that is mostly sailed, and if anything, would just upset its core player base, which has stuck around fundamentally. Marathon is not like Cyberpunk or No Man's Sky with loads of missing promised features or huge technical problems. Paul Tassi continues, Marathon's player count is holding up decently with a 20% drop in daily active users weekend to weekend. Less steep than Steam's concurrence at least, but it is dropping and we don't know where it will settle. There are some saying that these numbers for a hardcore niche extraction shooter are pretty good, but 5+ years and hundreds of millions of dollars spent, earning $50 million in its launch window is not a good result for both the game and Bungie, even if a lot of players like it, and I agree with that. Like, if this was a game made for a fraction of its cost by a much smaller team, like, we wouldn't be here discussing this. It would be totally fine, but this is Bungie. They need those Call of Duty Battlefield numbers to justify their games existing, and these are not that at all. According to Paul Tassi again, there are currently, as seen here, no plans to change what future seasons of Marathon are going to have either. So it's not looking good for the extraction shooter that frankly shouldn't have existed to begin with if you ask me. I guess some good news at least is that people who play Marathon tend to stick with the game, as a Circana analyst said here, as you can see. Marathon players are ranking the game for playtime at least on PlayStation and Xbox respectively. But either way, it's not translating to enough new players joining at a healthy rate that it needs. My problem is that Sony has bet the house and the farm on these live service games this generation way too much. And also because of that, there isn't as many games to show for it compared to the previous generations. The amount of games that are being pitched, made halfway, then abandoned is far too much these days at Sony if you ask me. Like, they just closed down another live service studio, by the way, at Sony, as seen here from IGN. Dark Outlaw Games has been shut down, which was a new first-party Sony studio meant to make yet another live service title for the company. And this Dark Outlaw studio was founded by Jason Blundell, who also, by the way, was the founder of Deviation Games, which, in case you don't know, that was also a first-party studio like startup that briefly came out and then also shut down as well. So that is now the second time this Jason Blundell guy has led a first-party studio at Sony that closed down without releasing a single game to show for all the work and money spent. This Jason guy worked on Call of Duty specifically back in the day, the zombie parts of that franchise, and then even then, nothing has happened. You ask me, there's just way too many live service titles in the works at Sony, and it just kind of gets like disgusting the more you think about it. Because what's the point if 90% of them are going to fail anyways and be erased, and then nobody can play them like even if they wanted to? At the very least, if they made some single player games, they would exist forever. I mean, Concord is gone. The Last of Us faction game got shut down. That God of War live service game never came out either. Marathon is in limbo. Destiny 2 is not doing great either. Unless your name is Helldivers 2, everything else Sony made live service wise is kind of knocking on death's door, with Marathon kind of just waiting in line for their turn to walk through it too at this point. This entire service model and way of making games needs to stop, man. It's such a waste of resources and time. Again, why bother playing these games if they can just pull them out and take everything away? Like, why even invest to begin with? I think Marathon's not doing well, one, because Bungie's reputation is bad, which is their own fault, but two, because people are just kind of sick of investing into something which half the time won't exist in 6 months anyways. So we've reached an apathetic point where there's really no reason at all in investing in these games to begin with, if there's even a slight possibility that all the money and the time that you spent is going to be gone and the game just won't exist anymore. It's instead just better to spend that money on something that actually will exist and can still be playable later on, like a single player game. And I keep saying this, is it no wonder why single player games this year especially keep winning the way that they do? Crimson Desert's going to exist forever, so too will Resident Evil Requiem or Slay the Spire 2. Even if you stop playing them for a month or two, they will still be there for you to pick it up again. But you can't say the same for Marathon or really any game that's like that. The moment the players dip too much, that's it, man. How insane to think that unless people play your game every single day and constantly engage with it, then no matter how much time has passed or not, or how much you have invested, you can just lose everything anyways. Again, why even do it? Like, this whole ambition, right, these studios have, it just leads to arrogance every time. For Bungie, this single decision to bet all in on this live service thing is what is currently sending them as a studio on a collision course with hard reality, if you ask me. Because all I'm seeing with how Marathon is going down is that this is not some bold new direction. It just feels like a warning of like what not to do. But when you go back, Bungie could do anything they wanted because they had something that many studios didn't have, which was that they had actual real player trust. People believed that no matter what happened or what they made, that Bungie would always deliver something that would be worth playing and buying day one. And instead of building on that legacy, they decided that they're going to go hard into this gold rush that is the live service genre. And Marathon was supposed to be that like diamond pickaxe, if you will, meant to mine all the riches. And sure, on paper, it might have made sense, right? Destiny did great originally. The AAA industry was chasing this live service stuff across the board. Publishers wanted their reoccurring revenue. Studios wanted what I can only call their forever game. But the problem is that this only works if people actually want that too. And I mean, come on, dude. Even before launch for Marathon, the warning signs were already there. So much confusion over the game's identity, the mixed reaction to the early reveals, the plagiarism scandal where Marathon's art style wasn't even Bungie's, but like some artist even that didn't even work there. It was a big disconnect between what people wanted from Bungie versus what they were building instead. And when you look at the insane amount of articles about Bungie and Marathon and the inner workings of this game over all the years, there were concerns about the direction, the scope, whether the game was like even aligned with what Bungie wanted to do in the first place. But these warning signs never once stopped the momentum, because once you're making something like this that costs somewhere between $200 to $300 million, like, dude, that's an Avengers movie level budget and scale, by the way, all of this becomes way too big to even question. And then it just unravels, dude. Like, Marathon represented years of development, massive financial investments. But the problem here is that these strategic bets and investments, like they clearly now in retrospect anyways, they're being built on the wrong foundation if you ask me, and these consequences, they're not small either. I mean, come on dude, these are catastrophic because the issue there doesn't just become, oh, will Marathon succeed or fail? It then becomes that this outcome of whether Marathon survives or not is a direct litmus test to whether Bungie still has the ability to even understand what their audiences even want these days. So at its core, there's an identity problem. Bungie is at their best when they build their games for gameplay and player-driven experiences and not systems or trends. And I'm not saying that Marathon isn't unique, it is to a degree, but it's not shaking the heavens like Halo and Destiny did before it, and that's for sure. These games, man, they're all built to last forever, yet ironically, most don't even last a full calendar year despite how much is spent making them. Instead, they're just being made by committee instead of these maverick teams that do cool things. And again, Marathon has cool stuff in it, but it's clearly not enough. But I think the harsh reality a lot of people in game making need to realize is this, okay? And I'll just say it bluntly so that there's no confusion. Not every studio can make a live service game true. That is very much the case. But what they also need to realize is that not every audience wants those games either. And look, if Marathon does fail, it then all becomes a defining stake that's in the heart of this live service monster, if you ask me. Because it will be confirmation that if even a studio like Bungie can fail with all of their history and their resources and their experience, then maybe this trend is over and everyone is just trying to draw blood from this horse that has been dead for years now. Even great studios can lose sight of what makes them great, and when that even happens, rebuilding that trust becomes even more difficult than it already was, and for Bungie, that's like doubly so. And Marathon, despite its name, it might be the end of this sort of thing, honestly. I don't know what it will mean for Bungie in the future, but like, for the love of God, dude, like stop trying to make these sorts of games all over all of the time. If you need people playing it forever for it to exist, then maybe the entire logic behind it has been flawed from the beginning, you know? Like, what do you think? Let me know. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to, but like, what a shame, man. What a shame. Like, enough of these games. I miss the Sony that used to really double down on the single player games, and I really miss the Bungie that was more PvE than whatever this is, but it is what it is. Let me know what you guys think. I'll see you guys next time.